the number one buzz term in franchising, FSO. Should we use them? Should we not? Is there value? Coming up next. I get it. When we're young children, we dream of the day that we're 21 so that we're an adult, or 16 so we can drive a car. And so emerging brands and established brands have dreams of skipping over growing up and accelerating brand life. But when you do that, you leave a lot of flaws. And so the buzz term in the industry is FSO. And we can see this. I mean, I did a coffee and analytics this morning, and there was a franchise consultant broker on there who said, I don't like working with FSOs because they're just machines that just sell and doesn't take care of the candidate. And so what you're seeing the shakiness a little bit on what's the value of an FSO. So before I go into my part in deep detail, Charles, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly of working with a franchise sales organization?
It's like any other vehicle or mechanism. You need to be in the right place as a franchise brand with the right assets, the right capital, and the right team when you work with a high quality FSO. So I've seen the benefits; they could be tremendous. A brand with great founders, good foundation, right expectations, capital. FSO accelerates the sales process. Plus, they could support the franchisees and grow. But then I've also seen the other end of it, which are brand new franchisors where they're really not yet ready. I tell every franchisor they need to season their franchise offering for about a year or two. And the FSO model doesn't gain traction, not because the FSO doesn't work, they're not ready for it. And then you have the in-between, you sell, but you're not ready to support. So it's like a tool. You need to use it with the right application, the right circumstance, right? If you don't, you may break things or you may not get a benefit.
To the franchisor, I think it depends. I mean, depends at what's the right timing to do it and where's your expectation at. So timing, in my opinion, you do not use a FSO as a way to drive capital because that's not how it works. The ultimately majority of the FSO models will take the bulk of your franchise fee, so you're not left with much cash. So if you're undercapitalized and you use an FSO to accelerate growth, you're going to need the money to open up these franchises successfully because you're going to have to make the money off the royalty. So if you're looking at your bank account and you're feeling stressed about it, then you're not ready for an FSO on that front. For a franchisee, using being a tool that the FSO is pushing through, I mean, you've come through a broker network. I think you need to have your guard up to know that brokers only feed you businesses that are in their inventory. So when you say, I want to own an ice cream brand, and they say, here's the ice cream brand you should buy, you need to cut the cards, cut the deck to see what else is in the category. Don't just rely on what the broker is handing you, because the broker is only going to get paid on the brands that are in the inventory. And so an FSO, I think, is tremendously valuable if you're well capitalized, if you've done some of the foundational work, you are ready to support the franchisees when they onboard, and you want to accelerate the relationship with the broker networks, because many of the broker networks are using the FSO because of the pure volume of deals that they can push through and get done. So, I mean, I've had plenty of brands ask me what my opinion is. I'm going to give you a real story. I said this morning too. I have a brand who used an FSO, and they pushed multi-unit deals. And so one example was they signed a deal. The franchisee got pushed to sign a 40-unit deal. opened up one, struggled, closed. The franchisee walks away, lost all the fees. Franchisor has a now 40 that didn't come through. And the only people that made money was the FSO and the broker. That's what I don't like. I think that's the ugly side of this is, and I can see this with like an IFA. An IFA, the number one person or business that an IFA looks out for is the franchisor. I don't think that's the right people we need to protect. I think we start with protecting the franchisee that's going to invest their life savings into a business that they have little to no control over. And in exchange for that, then we're actually protecting the franchisor because we're setting the expectation for the franchisee properly. And then we protect the franchise supplier to vet the suppliers properly, not some like bullshit entrepreneur list, where we vet suppliers fair and honestly to give the best support. The reality is, I think what has happened is we're all trying to grow faster than good business grows, and you hear this fancy 100th unit number. There's a reason 2% of brands make it there because of all the noise and complexity that's below that.
Yeah, and it's like any other industry. There's quality and then there's lower quality, right? So there are plenty of circumstances where I've seen an FSO make a very principled decision of, hey, we think this brand can achieve great things and sell, but we're concerned about the capitalization and ability to support franchisees. So I do see that positive element. And again, so it just depends on who you're dealing with. For the startup emerging franchisors listening to this conversation, right? FSO is a franchise sales organization. Why are they so valuable? Because the missing link for most startup and emerging franchisors is they really don't have a sales process. They don't understand their branding. They don't understand the intricacies of what's involved in a franchise sale, and also meeting a franchisee candidate at a point in life where you could create a win-win relationship and why they should sign up with your brand. So sales are hard, and then you trace this back even further. I will use another term instead of FSO. I'll use the term franchise development company. And so there's these franchise development companies out there. Again, there's high quality, there's lower quality, there's what appears to be industry standards. But what I do see, a systemic issue, not with all, is whether the franchise lawyers or the franchise development companies, they're not properly educating and onboarding new franchisees to understand what comes next after the operations manual and after the FDD is issued, what it's like to sell. I mean, I could sometimes want to lose my mind when I'm in a conversation and I hear things like, well, XYZ brand does it this way, but XYZ brand's like 600 units, and all this minute detail about the most insignificant things. And my brain is racing like, hey, development company, when my client's going to be left in this franchise jungle, and all these great things we did in the FDD, they're going to be meaningless because we can't achieve sales, then what? So I think so. Then emerging franchisors gravitate toward FSOs, sales organizations. So for sure there's a need, but I think there's a big need for someone to tell these emerging brands, you need to go back and do your homework. Because even if you hire us over the next year and we present you and show you at every broker conference, or come to every regional broker or whatever, you're not going to sell franchises. Because the brokers want to know about the unit economics, the validation, your story, and what it's going to be like for the franchisee the first 6 months after they sign an agreement. And no one's prepared to have that conversation. And that's where FSOs accelerate and do well. But the brands need to do their homework and legwork.
Well, I think the brands need to set up a strong foundation. I talked with a brand, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were in the frozen treat space. And they go, we've done things differently. we've engineered our mobile unit to do this and this and this and this and this and this, and it's an experience. I said, great, let's put that aside. What's the cost to open up one of these? And they go $400,000. I said, okay. And they're like, we're going to require buyers to buy a 3-pack. We will not sell anything less. Like, okay, 1.2 million. Got it. I said, what's your AUV? She goes, well, we're about 250. I said, 250? She goes, yeah. I go, so I invest $1.2 million, I gross $750,000, and my net is what? She goes, somewhere in the 20% range. I said, so it's going to take me 10 years to pay off my initial investment. Yeah, but this is a big opportunity. I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you're ready to franchise. She goes, well, other people have said that we are. That's the issue. When we're playing in a game of money in a world where things can sell, and people do get excited by the shiny object, there's a lack. You said do your homework, but it starts with making sure you have a viable business opportunity. Then you can plug it in and accelerate it.
Right, and that's what the good FSOs are looking for, right? That business opportunity that translates. Look, good FSOs are going to be focused on item 19 and the ROI you're talking about. So the brands out there just need to look at the criteria these FSOs are really relying on. Yeah, well, this comment, Raintree is an amazing FSO, right? Amazing. Brent and his team are amazing.
I think part of the reason, and Brent's done FranX a million times. And
right.
It's public news. He recently got acquired by Fastlane's private equity fund, which is why he's not on here. He's going through some of those transitions. He always took an honest approach, and you could play back all of the FranXs that we did together. Brent always took an honest approach with it. He wasn't coming in here and telling a brand that they're going to sell a billion locations. He's like, look, here are the truths. I think that's a big part. But I will say the rain trees are few and far between in franchising, because we sell pipe dreams.
Well, but and back to that comment, right? Brent and his team really scrutinize what can we do for this brand and really go through a process. So that's a great example, and that's a great comment of where an FSO is critical, right? And it's the right one, right? But there aren't that many.
Well, I bet you Michael has a foundation. That's what Raintree did, which is smart. Like let's be clear. Let's call it is what it is. Brent would say, what's the cost to get in? How much I can make? Who's the leadership behind this? Is there a point of differentiation in the product? Where are you growing and how are you growing? Concentric circles or not to protect brand options? And when we get the validation, what does it look like? Which is exactly the way that a good candidate is going to walk through the track. So when he does that and he comes to the conclusion that, yes, this is a good opportunity, now he can sleep at night because he's like, I see the viability of it. Where the disconnect with Brent came, and he's talked about this, is when he goes through all that and the brand says, I want 1,000 units. He's like, you won't have 1,000 units. You could probably sell 15 of these. They're like, absolutely not. I want 1,000 units. And so that's the difficulty here is we're franchising isn't data based. Very few brands get the foundation right, and expectations are always misaligned.
Well, we've been there at one of our masterminds where Brent and one of his brands, in a very bold and wise decision, said we're going to pause sales for a little while. And Brent, as an FSO, was fully supportive, and we saw the win on that. So, again, the right FSO quality is going to be very genuine and honest about whether or not you qualify, and they're going to be candid about your capitalization, because good FSOs also know they're tying themselves with the brand. Now, on the flip side, there's FSOs like in every industry that aren't focused on that quality, and they're just on brand acquisition. And I don't have a problem with that, except where I see if a brand starts today with an FSO that's not as focused as Raintree and whatnot, and fast lane and the premium FSOs. But and then I meet them 2, 3 years from now, and nothing's evolved in their brand. It's just like, hey, we've gone to shows, we've been represented. I see presentations and processes that are very genuine, not founder driven. And then the downside is they've lost 2 years and they haven't grown, and they're going to get frustrated and think the model doesn't work.
Yeah, I think it's weird. Like franchise brands look at number of sales as the indicator of whether they're a big business versus a P&L. Like you can make it, like let's say you have 10 franchisees who each do $1 million, and you put all your energy into getting them to 2 million, and you have 5% royalty. You just doubled the amount of money that comes in your business. Or you go sell, you have to go sell 10 more franchisees to get them into your system, which takes your eye off the ball on the previous 10. And now you have 20 who have AUVs of 800. I know I'm using silly math, but the point is, like, sometimes growth is in building a great business of franchisees who scale, not just selling to sell, but in FSO, you got to understand, like, majority of FSOs are paid based on the amount of units that they sell. And that's not bad. That's good business. But you have to, as long as you understand how it all works, then I think FSOs are franchise sales organizations can be a great tool to support a business, because it also offsets your sales team. If they're doing your sales soup to nuts, you don't need a chief development officer and a VP of development and 2 directors of franchise sales and a qualifier. Like they're taking on some of that heavy labor cost on your behalf.
Right. And they're sharing or pooling that aggregate knowledge base of what's been working for brands, right? And then and that's, they're basing that knowledge on the brands they sign up. But as to your point, right, that's the big realization, which is I care more about the EBITDA valuation of my franchise system driven by royalties as opposed to franchise fees. And the hope is for the emerging brands out there, they're looking at the franchise fee and those contract signings as starting that process and growing that EBITDA valuation.
Yeah, I think if my answer is should you work with an FSO, if you're well capitalized, you've done your homework to establish your business, and you have enough support around you to make those franchisees successful. Like you've actually built up a support team, which could be franchise business coaches, head of operations, and it aligns with what your vision is, where you're willing to put money into that with could make nothing to make sure those franchisees get open at that point because you capitalize the business right. I think they could be tremendous value.
But also be genuine and honest with yourself and your team. Do you have a unique element? Do you hit the markers on what is the unit economic story, the ROI story? What are the differentiators and what makes your brand unique? And why? What do you do? Or how you do it that would cause a broker to take pause and say, right, you need that. And sometimes I see emerging and startup brands jump too fast to an FSO model because they haven't allowed their seasoning to happen and really understand, and differentiate what they're building. And so they don't get good industry feedback.
Simon says, does the prospect know they are interacting with the FSO and not the franchisor themselves? I'm sure there are cases that they do, but I don't think so. I think they're disguised mostly as a part of the brand, right?
Right, and they're technically franchise sellers under the franchise laws.
Are they listed on the FTD?
Well, they'll typically be identified in the receipt page to the FTD.
Got it. Jeff said, which are the right sized FSOs for an emerging brand? Frankly, you got to look at the portfolio of the FSO, see what types of brands they work with. But I still think, like, you have to have to figure out the capital side more than anything.
Well, and you look, just because an FSO says we'll take you on, do an inventory check, right? Because you don't want to get a year in and not get good results and friction. And ultimately it may have been a conversation should have been had early on, which is you're not yet ready. Here's the assets we need to build up.
Just so that we give him play. Josh put what his new tattoo is.
God bless Josh. Love him.
Well, I mean, look, and this is a tool for anybody that's watching this, that's considering it. You watch this video, you come to your own conclusion, but reach out to either of us. You can find Charles and I are both very active on LinkedIn, so reach out to us if you have more questions about whether you should do this or not. But that's FranX. It's good to be back, Charles. We took the last 2 weeks off, so
I was missing FranX.
However, we took it off, but we were talking during that time. We had very important meetings. We're very important people. See you guys.
Right.